right, let's call this meeting to order. Can we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Diab.
Present.
Councilmember Davis. Not here. Councilmember Camis. Mayor Liccardo.
Present.
Chair Chappie Jones.
Here.
We have a quorum.
All right, so we're going to go right to review of the work plan. We have 3 changes to the work plan. I'd like to take all 3 changes in one motion.
So moved. Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All right. Moving forward, nothing on the consent calendar. So we're going to D1, the reports, the Smart City Roadmap.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Mr. Mayor, Kip Harkness, Deputy City Manager, and here I'm going to have Rajani Nair take us through the next iteration of our Smart Cities Roadmap. We presented to you last month as we are evolving from our Innovation Roadmap 1.0 to a true Smart Cities Roadmap 2.0. And as following our principles, the evolution of the roadmap itself is iterative. So Rajani, who is our Smart City Manager and owns this roadmap, will walk us through the latest on where we are. I do want to say this was a highly collaborative endeavor with the Mayor's Office of Technology and Innovation, and I feel like we're making some real breakthroughs as kind of a one path, 2 journeys that we're on.
Thank you, and good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Honorable Mayor, members of the committee, or member, and the public. My name is Rajani Nair. I am the Smart City Manager for the innovation team. But before I begin, I wanted to share a brief background of my experience. I have over 20 years of work experience in the civil engineering field. More than half of my career, I worked for the city, primarily in Public Works Department. And I had the great fortune to lead a team to work on several capital improvement projects in some of your council districts, particularly Alviso Storm Pump Station, and Chenoweth Green Street and Park Avenue Green Street. So sorry, Mr. Chair, not in your district. So
I'm used to it.
All right. So in my role, in my new role, I am excited to share our progress with the development of the Smart City Roadmap. And I do look forward to working with all of you as we advance it further for the future. So next slide, please. Okay, thank you. So since the inception of the Innovation Roadmap 1.0 that was created back in January 2017, it was an ambitious approach to spark innovation within the city. The Innovation Roadmap 1.0 provided the city a North Star that helped us stay on course in fulfilling the Smart City vision that was adopted by Council in 2016. We did recognize during this journey that we needed to evolve our approach to further enhance the Smart City Roadmap 2.0 for the future. Today, I will be discussing 2 key unique aspects for the future roadmap. 1, how we plan to implement the Smart City vision, and 2, discuss an innovative 2-pipeline approach for our Big Rocks and Small Wonders project. As you recall, our initial approach on what we focus on and what we choose to work on is based upon 3 questions. Is it important to people? Does it cause a lot of pain? Is it core to what the city does? And can it be achievable at scale with technology or process improvements? Where these 3 circles intersect in this Venn diagram is that sweet spot where we identify we can make a difference and have a greater impact. Similarly, how we do our work is just as important, and we believe in 3 innovation principles. Champion the customer, empathize the customer, and understand their needs. Learn through data. We measure performance with data to continuously improve our services. Iterate to improve, which is core to what we do, where we rapidly iterate, reflect, and learn from failure or successes before scaling. Earlier this year, the challenge we received from Council was to broaden and deepen our work around innovation. Back in June, we presented this to the committee that ultimately the Smart City Roadmap 2.0 needed to be comprised of 3 key areas: IT roadmap, Brilliant at the Basics, and Innovation Roadmap, Innovation as Impact, which combined is known as our Big Rocks. But we recognize that a separate third space was needed for experiments, known as our Small Wonders. This space for small wonders will give the city the opportunity to harness the genius of Silicon Valley that surrounds us. Moving forward, how we plan to broaden and deepen our work around innovation will require us to essentially create several North Stars that will help us as a city to implement the Smart City vision. As you can see on this slide, we have identified 7 themes where each theme embodies a centralized idea to spur more innovation. Within each of these themes, we will need to identify strategies that will provide more specific goals to help departments develop a portfolio of projects that will essentially further strengthen and improve our services to the community. On this slide, we have identified several strategies that have either been developed, currently in progress, or planned for the future. On the bottom left-hand corner shows a color key stating the status of each of these strategies that we want to focus on in the near term. This approach was based upon the success of the digital inclusion and broadband strategy. We have learned through that process the importance in investing the time to develop a strategy and define goals, which allowed us to get closer to minimizing that digital divide in our city. Overall, we recognize using this approach by identifying a combination of strategies within each theme will allow the city to create a path forward to continue to spur innovation that will ultimately fulfill the Smart City vision. Nevertheless, as we continue to move forward on this journey, it is important to recognize the ongoing capability transformation with regards to people, process, and technology that will be required. Since year 1 of the Smart City vision, significant effort has been made with building the Innovators Network and learning how we redesign key processes, yet maintain a strong focus on replatforming our technology. As we go into year 3 to multiply the effort and focus on execution at scale, we need to do more in engaging the community and expanding our Innovators Network while improving our digital services and investment with security, privacy, data architecture, and platform. So looking back, we recognize that the Innovation Roadmap 1.0 focused primarily on IT roadmap, Brilliant at the Basics, and Innovation as Impact. Our big rocks, basically. Though in retrospect, we knew our big rocks were to strengthen our workforce with new talent, better communicate to our community through My San Jose app, and rebuild and replatform our IT infrastructure to help us move forward in being a smart city. However, we did not have a process in place dedicated to small wonder projects that are emerging opportunities. So the development of a 2-pipeline process is one of the major breakthroughs that sets the Smart City Roadmap 2.0 apart from the Innovation Roadmap 1.0. Previously, the projects that were identified on the Innovation Roadmap 1.0 typically targeted the same teams who were involved in focusing on these small wonders. And it was difficult to shift focus because these small wonders projects required a different approach and timeline that eventually led to capacity issues. Now, having a 2-pipeline process for our big rocks, as you see on the top on the slide, versus our small wonders, shown in blue on the bottom, will allow the city staff to focus separately on major necessary projects to build our smart city infrastructure, while exploring innovative ideas through our small wonders pipeline through a different process and team. The Big Rocks projects have a simplified approach in processing projects to delivery because it's based on a proven concept and has value to scale. What distinguishes the Small Wonders pipeline with the Big Rocks is that these small wonder projects are time-boxed and there can be opportunities to take on more risk. Bottom line, the Small Wonders pipeline is more detailed vetting process that will evaluate ideas, see if it has value to scale, and make the city ready for the future. Here's a closer look at the process of the Small Wonders pipeline. In Agile framework, this is similar to a Kanban approach, which means in Japanese a signboard or a billboard, and it typically refers to a board of visualizing the flow of work. This actually did start in Toyota in the manufacturing side to improve communication through a visual management process. Using this process, we have an opportunity for the city staff to learn or fail without impacting our big rocks. As you can see also on this slide, the level of detail to evaluate the Small Wonders project is more involved than the Big Rocks project. It allows the team to vet all possible solutions up front and streamline it to focus on ideas that are viable. Overall, it will help the city staff to quickly evaluate the benefits of these projects in a timely manner. Also shown on the slides are projects currently in progress to demonstrate where they are within the workflow of the Small Wonders pipeline process. So here we are today. This photo has been updated since our last meeting in September. So since the inception of the Innovation Roadmap 1.0 back in January 2017, the number of projects really have exploded over 600%. Currently, we have about 130 projects. Roughly 80% of them are big rocks and 20% of them are small wonders. That we will need to prioritize and resource in order to successfully implement these projects. Also, we will need to determine how these small wonder projects will be part of the Big Rocks pipeline once it's deemed successful. So how do we plan to prioritize? That's the big question. As I stated earlier in the presentation, we'll continue to use the 3 criteria for our Big Rocks projects, which is important to our community, what is core to what the city does, and is it achievable at scale. However, now that we're evaluating our Small Wonders projects separately, we'll need to ask a slightly different question. So a 4th criteria will be incorporated if these projects will get us ready for the future. We are in the beginning phase to develop a systematic approach to prioritize the Small Wonders project. Also, we will need to collaborate with the city departments to seek their feedback on priorities for all projects. We will come back and engage with the committee in the near future with these results. After we prioritize these projects, we're going to need a village to implement. As I mentioned earlier, when we multiply the effort, the need for transforming the capabilities of people will become more important as we continue to innovate for the future. We have been successful in bringing expertise from industry through several fellows programs. Also, a huge part of our success was recognizing that innovation is a team sport that included the help and collaboration of our private-public partnerships, foundations, and nonprofits. There will be a need to ensure there is capacity to evaluate small wonder projects, in addition to providing tools and training for our staff to lead, maintain, and sustain these large, complex, big rocks projects. We are interested in creating an opportunity for staff to expand their capabilities to solve problems or strengthen their skill sets through a new program such as the Innovation Fellowship, or enhancing an existing program such as the Employee Suggestion Pilot Program that Councilmember Camus funded and championed. Programs like these will ultimately help us expand our innovators network and build a new generation of leadership. Lastly, this slide shows a current list of active projects that have resulted from the development of the broadband strategy under the Smart Infrastructure theme. This is intended to demonstrate the complexity and difficulty we are faced to prioritize, staff, and deliver more than $500 million worth of projects. Each box you see here is a specific project with a contract, funding source, and scope. Using this tree mapping method, the size of each box reflects the relative effort intended to deliver each of these projects in comparison to others within the smart infrastructure theme. This is the first prototype of the roadmap on how we would like to provide status updates to the committee. We will continue to use the stoplight approach using green, yellow, and red to provide status updates similar to what we've done with the Innovation Roadmap 1.0. As I stated before, we will need to work with the departments to prioritize the projects and determine a short list of projects for reporting to the community in the future. We are evaluating other tools on how we want to keep track and report out the progress of these projects. One interesting comment that we did receive from the Smart City Advisory Board is that we don't share all our great things fast enough. And so an option that we would like to explore is to have a display for the community to access so that they can get updates. So our next steps will be defining strategic outcomes and program metrics. To date, there are 6 strategies that have been identified and funded. These are digital services, data, safe city, community Wi-Fi, digital inclusion, and privacy. We do intend to give the committee updates on these strategies in the near term and definitely within the next 6 months committee outlook. And lastly, developing the project prioritization process that will be helpful for our team and our counterparts in Modi and city departments to focus on key projects to staff and fund for the delivery of these projects. And this will conclude my presentation, and I'll hand it off to Kip for closing remarks. Thank you.
In closing, I just want to kind of echo the theme that we've talked about of technology being powered by people and acknowledge Rajani's leadership on this piece of work. We are extremely lucky to have a highly talented team. Rajani's, as you mentioned, a civil engineer and with many, many years of experience that she brings to the table. I also want to take a moment to introduce newest member of our team, Dr. Kala Fleming, who, just go ahead and stand up. Dr. Fleming comes to us through Way of the Fuse Fellow, which is our proven track record for bringing on board amazing people at this point. She has over 15 years experience really focusing on this idea of connecting resource-constrained communities using emerging digital technologies in a way that increases opportunity and prospects for economic development and empowerment everywhere from the Caribbean to Africa to North America. And she has a PhD in civil and environmental engineering from the University of Wisconsin at Madison. Go Badgers. And is a frequent speaker on entrepreneurship, agribusiness, and economic development issues globally. So we're absolutely delighted to have Kala as part of the team. And I realized I was just doing the stats. I think all 4 female members of our team are engineers. So in an era when people are talking about difficulty attracting tech talent and difficulty attracting female technical leadership, I think we're punching well above our weight in that category, and I'm super proud of who we've been able to attract and retain. With that, we'll go back to the subject matter of the Roadmap 2.0 with a final appreciation to our counterparts again in Modi, Mayor's Office of Technology and Innovation, for helping us collaboratively develop this. Thank you.
Thank you, Kip, and thank you for assembling such a high-powered team. Very, very impressive. So I know the mayor has 12 questions. So
How'd you know?
I don't know.
I'll keep it to 9.
Okay, thanks.
All right, cool. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Rajani, thank you for did I mispronounce it? Is it Rajani?
Reggie, but it's okay. We have many years.
All right, I'm going to
Yeah.
practice a bunch of times.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for your work, and thanks to Kip and everyone. Also from Team Modi, I want to thank Shireen and Carolyn. I know this has come a long way from where we were just in the last meeting, where we were identifying the challenges, and now we've got a roadmap and a strategy, and this is great to see. So thank you for all the hard work. And I do appreciate having these 2 sort of pipelines of work flow. The big rocks are really, really important, we know, but I hate to lose sight of the small wonders as well. And I imagine that there may be a sort of a different level of persistence with these as well. We know the big rocks have to be moved no matter what. The small wonders, we may take on an approach of failing fast and recognizing if they're not working, we switch quickly and focus our energy somewhere else. And so really appreciate these are really going to require different approaches, and it's great to see we can keep both on moving forward because I think they're both real important. I wanted to ask a quick question about the next steps. And I know that we're trying to develop quantifiable metrics, and I know that's not easy. First, I want to ask you about where we have developed metrics. And I'm thinking, for example, in development services where we've been displaying metrics, and I feel too often it's a bit of a check the box exercise where we say, here's the metrics, but there's not necessarily a clear connection to here's what we're trying to accomplish, and here's the metric that really matters, and here's how we're either improving or not meeting that goal, and we're learning X, you know what I mean? And I guess to what extent will this development of metrics also be tied to, you know, managing what you can measure?
Mr. Mayor, I think that is exactly the weak spot, right? We traditionally we've been pretty good at developing annual performance measures that we've reported out that give you a sense of kind of where we are or where we aren't on various services. And I think at the tactical level, we have some services where we're actually using data on a regular basis. But what we fail to do is sort of have strategic measures or operational measures that are really informing the way that we're managing the service rather than just reporting out on what we're doing. I'm actually taking this on personally as an area of study over the next 6 to 9 months to improve my understanding of it. But I think what we want to do is we want to starting with the broadband strategy, we want to take each of the funded strategies and apply more rigor on it. And that rigor has to happen essentially at 3 levels. One is the strategic. What's the picture of success? What's the outcome? And what are a couple of high level, probably every 6 month or annual measures that we might look at? Next is operational, and that's more the 3 to 6 month time frame or quarterly basis that we should be using to manage the service. And the third is the tactical, which are what the day-to-day or week-to-week teams are using. I think that part of what you'll see in development services, for example, is we'll start to have more of that strategic, operational, and tactical set of measures around the integrated permitting system deployment first, and then around some of the process improvements second. We intend to do that approach with each of our major strategies, starting with broadband. The reality is we don't have a lot of muscle of using data in that way, and so we're going to need you to keep holding our feet to the fire and putting the pressure on us to do that work well. The way that we intend to do that is the next 6-month work plan, which we are drafting now. We intend essentially every month to have a strategy coming back to you and saying, hey, we think this is the high-level outcome. These are the 3 key measures we think at the strategic level. These are a couple of the operational measures. Is this the right way of thinking about it? Cool. Are these measures, especially the strategic ones, useful to you? And do the operational measures make sense? That regular cadence of once a month coming back with a strategy, being candid about where we are and aren't, is our way of approaching it. And as I will be doing personally, I hope we'll do as a team, learning a little deeply from some of the work in the Valley around how you can use approaches like OKRs that they use at Google and others to drive this kind of execution at scale.
Thanks, Kip. You already answered my next question, which was really around timeline and sort of the pace at which we'd be seeing metric development, which is great. Looking forward to that. Next question really had to do with how we enable or help to bring in departments in this effort around emergency projects, because we know every department has 2 things in common. They're understaffed and overworked, and taking on emerging projects is hard. And while clearly you've assembled some really brilliant people who are passionate about doing this work, we also know in lots of departments they're really passionate about getting their work done without having folks suggest new ideas for them to work on. So how exactly does this work where we can really infect all of our departments with the same kind of passion for this work?
Yeah, I pulled up the slide that Rajani and the mayor's office have been working on, and really The idea here is that one of the key resistance factors, legitimate resistance factors that we get from departments and department heads is, what problem is this solving for me that I have today, and how do I know that it's actually going to solve this problem? Because we're not set up to be research facilities, right? We like to procure solutions. And so part of what the Small Wonders allows us to do, if we do it right, is to be this lightweight research facility. This Innovators Network approach says there are a couple of things that could be gained by individuals by volunteering and spending some time on these Small Wonders that are actually good professional development. One is increasing their ability to work in autonomous teams, and two is really, and cross-departmentally, and two is expanding their technology leadership and their technology acumen. So the notion here is that now that these are time boxed, let's say 16 weeks, you could basically put out a call and say, hey, we need 4 people to help us on this. 10% of your time over the next 16 weeks. And we'd like somebody with skills in marketing, we'd like somebody who understands transportation infrastructure, and we'd like 2 other folks. And essentially it would become an HR, human resources, training opportunity. They'd have to get approval, and we'd make sure that they were skilled folks doing it, match them up, and then over that 16-week period, we get the horsepower that we need to do the research and the work, and the individuals involved kind of get trained up on this more agile, Silicon Valley way of working. For the department, what they'd get hopefully is 2 things. 1, excited people coming back into the organization with some new knowledge. And 2, by the end of that 6 weeks, we should be able to say, you know what, this doesn't make sense at all for us, thank you very much. Or, wow, this actually applies to this problem that we have in the Department of Transportation. Let's put some funding in the mid-year budget, let's put some funding in the annual budget, and let's start moving it into the larger pipeline to scale and give you the resources that you need to absorb it, but not just expect you to figure it out on your own.
That's great. Thank you. Really helpful. Under 12 questions.
Yes, I'm proud of you, Mayor. Just a couple quick questions. One is, or first a statement, that I know that there was a philosophical disagreement in terms of, what we're calling big rocks versus utilizing resources for small wonders. And I come from the school of, you got to be able to block and tackle first before you start throwing the long pass. So I really appreciate the strategy in terms of having the 2 separate pipelines in the process that we're going to go through in terms of evaluating both big rocks and small wonders, and determining whether we have the resources, the bandwidth, and the focus to pursue the small wonders. So I appreciate that feedback and that strategy. You also addressed my other question that I had about what I always refer to as what does success look like? And you define that as in terms of defining strategic outcomes. And so I appreciate that, and I'm very interested to see that when we have, presentations for a particular project, that we have some of the detail around that in terms of clearly stating what success looks like, or what you call the strategic outcomes, as well as any other additional metrics that we have to evaluate those projects. So that'd be great to see anytime we do a presentation on a project. And then the other thing I have to say is that just want to commend you guys for the outstanding work that you're doing. It's very impressive, and it's really exciting that we're moving forward with this. So thank you very much. And I know my colleague also has a question.
No question. I just want to thank the team for all their hard work, and express my appreciation that we're bringing back the term small wonder. The child of the 80s, I love that show, so I'm glad to hear it coming back. Thanks.
Could I also just say welcome to Doctor. Great to have you aboard, and great to see such a great team being assembled. Thanks, Kip.
Great. Have a couple of speakers. First one is Victor Sin.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council members. My name is Victor Sin. I'm a resident of San Jose and also the chair of the Santa Clara Valley chapter of the ACLU of Northern California. In page 6 of the presentation, I noticed that drone and robotics strategy is listed as future, whereas data strategy and privacy strategy are listed as in progress. Since the use of drones can lead to civil liberties concerns, I have the following question. In terms of planning, is it intended that the development of data strategy and privacy strategy is complete before we start working on drone strategy? Thank you.
If I could, I just want to respond directly to that, if that's okay.
Sure. Yes.
Yeah, we absolutely intend to have adequate privacy policy and data policy in place before we would be piloting any additional uses of drones beyond those that have already been directed by council. So Victor, I absolute agreement that the privacy and data work are critical precursor of drone and robotic strategy. So thank you for bringing that up.
And Kip, I really appreciate your response. I think they'll also, I'm guessing that this is going to be a pretty iterative process in creating a privacy and data strategy, and we're going to learn a lot as we go. So while we may finish 1.0, we're going to be in the constant process of updating, I would imagine. Correct. Yeah.
Thank you. Blair?
Hi, thank you. I guess to mention what was just spoken about, that was very nice. Maybe it's a time to think about how to reinstate the yearly review of the drone program itself as a way to bring on privacy policy ideas, just a suggestion. To talk about, it was nice to hear this lecture. I've heard some of it before, and it's of interest to me. I like the idea of city government trying to work with, they want to work with other people. They want to make a collaborative effort for everyone within city government. And that's an important concept to me. And I've been trying to learn that. You've been talking about that for about a year now. And it's important to me. I think an exciting way to build communication between different departments is the ideas of accountability, and that is something that you'd like to practice within your department, and to grow that within the city government itself, and then throughout the city itself. I think is an important concept, and it all brings us back to what I'm working on, which is accountability and openness. And again, it's not really listed here. You're sort of talking about it. I think it somehow has to learn, you guys really have to learn how to make it a more important part of everything that we do. It's how to raise our kids, basically, and teach them about responsibility in government, how there can be good government and good practices with this sort of thing. And yeah, it's just part of an overall concept that we're all trying to struggle how to do it. And so good luck to everyone in what we're doing, and thank you.
Thank you, Blair. Can I get a motion, please?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Next item is D2, small cell and fiber optics permitting process.
Good afternoon again, Mr. Chair, Mr. Mayor, member of the committee, and general public. Kip Harkness still. For this one, I'm going to invite down Jay Guevara, Matt Lesh, and Lily Lim Sao, who together are our small cells and fiber optics permitting team leads. And in trying to do real-time the request, Councilmember Jones, our picture of success, our strategic outcome that was directed by council with the broadband strategy were threefold. One is really this notion of improved service and consumer choice with better speeds, pricing, and connectivity. Second was digital inclusion so that everyone had access to those improvements. And then the third was preparing ourselves for a smart city future. This presentation will focus on the first of those outcomes, improving mobile speed, pricing, and connectivity for all San Jose residents through the actual installation of an expanded small cell network for multiple carriers. And with that, I'll turn it over to Jay to take us through a little bit in the weeds on some of the people, process, and technology improvements that we've been doing in the last few months.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Honorable Mayor, and Committee Member Dieppe, and the public. My name is Jay Guevara, Broadband Manager for the Innovation Team and the primary contact responsible for the relationship with the carriers and the overall strategy for the small cell deployment. I would like to introduce Matt Lesh, Deputy Director of Public Works and the executive sponsor for the small cell team, along with Lily Limsao, Transportation Management Division Manager. We are here to provide an update on the small cell team's progress in permitting for the small cells since May of 2018. We will cover the small cell team and permit improvements specifically. An update with recommendations on the Dig Once policy, which entails fiber optic permitting process improvements, will be provided in December. So to execute at scale, let's review the agreements and funding that enable the people, process, and technologies for process improvements. On May 1st, 2018, the amendment to the AT&T Master Lease Agreement was approved. June 26, 2018, City Council approved and directed staff to negotiate and execute major agreements with AT&T, Verizon, and Mobility. Fall of 2018, we've initiated the paced permitting of 10 permits a week, and by winter of 2019, performing permitting speed with predictability, averaging 30 permits a week. So if the small cell team were to be a sports car, with the full potential of the horsepower, the torque, and sustained speed, we are aiming to accelerate and shift gears. Now, we don't shift from first to fifth gear and expect success or the health of the overall vehicle and our enterprise to ensue. But if we champion the customer, learn through data, and iterate to improve, we can go from first to second, measure and learn, and then kick it into third gear while we hire and build the team. Before our team and dedicated resources, we accomplished about 5 permits since the first initial agreements in 2016. So that was pretty much coasting without dedicated resources or a full-on strategy. In the past few weeks, we are at a steady clip in second gear. In what used to take over 1 year, we are doubling our output to 10 permits and sustaining the rate for the last 4 weeks. To put this in perspective, in moving from overall 1.5 years to 1 week, we are accelerating the permit timeline by a magnitude of 774 times. This also means sustaining second gear for 12 months would result in over 500 permits, which meets our contractual obligations for one carrier's intended deployment for 2019. By the end of this presentation, you'll have a sense of what third gear looks, sounds, and feels like for the small cell team working in partnership with the carriers and continuing to execute at scale. So for fall of 2018, I already described that now we have sustained 10 permits for the past 4 weeks, and actually as of this week, we have 20 permits getting ready to go out the door. This drastic gear shift of where we were, now we're in second gear, and how we're approaching third gear is all due to our partnership amongst the Public Works team, Department of Transportation, and the innovation team. So let's review the small cell permitting timeline from the customer's perspective, where the carrier takes the following 6 steps. Executing at scale with over 4,000 small cells on the way, we really need to dive a little deeper into the weeds, as Kip introduced, and get into the people, process, and technology through this timeline. So step 1, the carrier submits a poll reservation to reserve the site. It typically takes 10 days. Matt will speak further on some of the process and technology improvements that we've worked between Department of Transportation and Public Works to accelerate that. Then the carriers are required to provide public notice to the public within 300-foot radius of the proposed site. And then one of our early innovations to streamline the process, we are essentially combining steps 3 and 4 in parallel. The carrier submits for their major utility permit application. At the same time, we prepare the site license agreement, or the SLA, so it's ready to go at the same time that construction permit is about to be released. This takes 30 to 60 days, depending on our contractual obligations. It's really important to point out that this 30 to 60 days, the vast majority, our 30-day contractual requirements, which exceeds the 60 days that the FCC's recent order has attempted to impose. So we are outperforming because we have the necessary funding to have the people, process, and technologies to provide this level of service. Finally, moving on to step 5, the carrier obtains the final permit with the site license agreement, enters the construction and inspection phase. Then step 6 coordinates with PG&E, ensures that the fiber wire line is there to connect to the small cell node, and then can turn that site on air.
So people are the team. The human capital, the engine of the small cell team's improvements. This blank slide represents the small cell team before May 2018. With no dedicated funding, commitments, and scaled deployments, permits were one type. Permits essentially fell into the queue of every other permit that Public Works received, and so there was no special priority put to that. Then the organization fell into place, and this organizational chart shows the small cell team as it sits today, with funding and specialization to streamline process improvements. The grayed out rectangles mark the positions that are to be hired in the near future. All of them are in recruitment stage now, except for some of the field staff that's coming up soon. The early ads were used with we used existing recruitments to capitalize on those quickly. We also did some assignment shifts to create the void someplace else so we could build out this team quickly. And we prioritize these hires within our department and with our departments to get these moving.
In late August, we held a half-day retreat to establish our... Sorry about that. It helps to turn the mic on. In late August, we held a half-day team retreat to establish our team charter, review our roles, metrics, milestones, communications, and recognize what works already. And finally, share our values for the digital inclusion that is fundamental to the mission of the small cell team. This team includes Public Works, Department of Transportation, and representatives from Planning, Building, and Code Enforcement, or PBCE, because some deployments favor a network installed primarily on rooftops, buildings, and monopoles, supplemented by small cells on city-owned streetlights. The team committed to driving processes to track average site screening times, permitting reviews, site license agreements, and construction to get small cells on air quickly while protecting safety and design. Here's a sample of some of the metrics, and to relate it to the previous presentation, what we could maybe call operational metrics, that the small cell team reviewed and committed to during this retreat, mapping the life cycle of this permit process we reviewed earlier. So breaking down that small cell team permitting timeline, we have a dashboard that we now have that gathers the data to measure our performance across many of the common areas. So for example, the location screening, we're looking at the number of locations approved with average time to review. An initial hand-based manual process took 14 days, and when resources are available, we've reduced that down to 2. Permitting, the permitting time for structural and electrical subteams, the average turnaround time for the city and the carriers. And here I want to pause briefly that in this age of measuring a shot clock, we've redefined that as a partnership, that the carriers and the small cell team are on the same team. We're sharing possession of the ball, and that both sides are working and collaborating together to improve the quality and responsiveness so we can drive that speed together, all due to the funding and the fundamental commitments we have in our partnerships. Returning back to this list, the average number of review cycles, as we reduce those, that shows a great quality measure of the improvement in those submittals. Site license agreement, or SLAs, the number in progress and the number executed. And finally, construction, with the number of pending final inspection and the number of sites ultimately activated. With these performance measures, we enable the team to identify opportunities to refine, economize, and improve as we ramp up and sustain a higher gear or run rate. Contractually, I want to clarify that I've used some metrics in this presentation that give a run rate or a number of permits released per week. However, contractually, the primary metric is that we are responding within 30 days or 60 days, depending on the carrier agreement.
If I could just respond to some of the kind of previous questions around metrics, I think this is a very good example, again, of the operational metrics that we'd like to use in future strategies. And the three kind of meta principles I think are important about this particular set of metrics. One, it was developed by the people who do the actual work, the people who know this work deeply, not me sitting somewhere saying this is the right metric. Two, it's a balanced set of metrics that give us a good view of what's going on. And three, it's got a cadence to it that will actually inform the work in a timely manner. So the dashboard isn't just a pretty picture. The dashboard can be used by the team itself to manage and reorient its work on a regular iterative basis. So we're using this kind of approach and those principles of the people doing the work, a balanced approach, and a cadence that can inform the actual work as we look at other more operational measures in other areas. So back to our main programming.
Thank you, Kip. With the people and the metrics as a foundation for the improvements, I want to highlight some key advancements the small cell team has achieved in terms of processes. Since June, the team conducts weekly conference calls to assess current and forthcoming permit submittals with the carriers. This helps to strengthen the relationship, build trust, while accelerating response times between carriers and the small cell team. This slide provides an image of a recent workshop with a carrier. There are several equipment vendors and 3 engineering contract teams, all in one room, all learning together. Public Works reviewed design and specification standards, then reviewed common comments on submittals, and following the workshop, the team made itself available for quote-unquote office hours with a video conference bridge for 48 hours to further accelerate the learnings, and we're seeing those results in the last 4 weeks. And this just took place over 2 weeks ago. Following the engineering workshop with the carriers, the small cell team set a priority work plan for 85 sites with one carrier just 2 weeks ago. This team is also in the process of setting a similar schedule with another carrier to accelerate their permit run rate. 85 is an important number because the second payment of $250,000 for the small cell scope completion fee is then due once we hit that first 85. Keeping this pace sets the team for success to measure the performance during the work plan, learn, and adjust and prepare for the next gear shift. So we've covered people and process for the improvements. Now let's cover how technology has improved our permitting.
For technology improvements, I want to highlight the online site selection tool. In collaboration with the DOT and Public Works GIS teams, a site selection tool was created in June to provide an online reservation system for carriers. This first version provides a way for carriers to identify a pole to reserve and check availability. Later iterations incorporated street moratoriums in effect due to street work performed in the last few years, along with the planned street moratorium in the next few years. Future improvements will include the identifying the type of light and the wattage of the light as part of the overall circuit, as well as integrating with the Enterprise GIS database. Another technology-based process improvement, including the flexibility of the small cell team to accept ground-penetrating radar to test and document a robust foundation to support structural analysis, stamped and signed by a professional engineer. Earlier this summer, the small cell team engaged with the carrier's request to evaluate the ability to using straps or bands to install devices on streetlights rather than direct drill install. The team set up a demonstration in the service yard on the streetlight, worked with the vendor to document and test the structural engineering, and approved the equipment and installation process. In the end, the carrier elected not to pursue the option due to other concerns, but they appreciated the flexibility to evaluate the installation technique. Finally, the small cell team is evaluating electronic permit processing tools to increase efficiency with the permit review process. What you see here, though, is an image of 20 hard copy permits. We need to digitize this process to further accelerate our speed and predictability So another aspect of technology is evaluating this digital permit submittal and review platform.
As of last week, as of this week, the small cell team definitely moved into third gear. We will hit at least 20 permits this week. And this is due to the investments in the people, processes, and technology that make the small cell team function at this high capacity like a sports car. So with that, I'd like to conclude the process improvement update and hand it back over to Kip.
So again, you see an example of one of these big rocks and what it takes to actually do this at scale, across the entire city, make sure that something is functioning 7 days a week, 52 weeks of the year. I mentioned and called out Kala and Rajani joining our team. I think that I also want to call out Lily and Matt as people who have been in the organization for the long haul through the good times and the hard times, and are equally as powerful as anybody that I've ever worked with outside in the tech sector. Bring with them not only deep technical expertise, but a deep dedication to this organization. And that's the kind of team that we're building and the kind of work that it takes to do it at scale. Also, the final thing that I want to acknowledge is we're also using this process to inform and learn into other larger pieces. For example, the work that Matt is insisting on in terms of digitizing some of the permitting will inform our integrated permitting system work and how we do digital permits across multiple departments before we deploy at scale, so we can work out some of the kinks, issues, and problems in a real world setting without having to put too much at risk. So these are examples of sort of cross-fertilization of different priorities and projects that are going on. But bottom line for me, again, technology is powered by people. In this case, deep appreciation to both Matt and Lily for shifting and prioritizing this along with all the other things they do on a day-to-day basis. With that, we're happy to take any questions, comments, feedback you might have.
Thank you, Kip and Jay and Matt and Lily for your hard work. I know the mayor has, 5 questions?
It's a tough audience here. Yeah, I want to echo the thanks. Matt, Lily, and Jay, really tremendous work, and it's great to see this acceleration happen. I know it happens because of really a lot of hard pushing from a lot of people on your teams together, and I also know it requires resources too, and so I really appreciate what is emerging here, which is great. I think maybe this is a question really more for Kip, as we think about the battles we've got in Washington right now and what the FCC's ruling, what potentially the Senate may do as well. We're involved in advocacy right now, and in many ways, what we're doing right here, this presentation, is one of the strongest arguments we can make for why local governments should be able to freely engage with the private sector to be able to develop agreements, negotiate agreements that help improve processes and benefit the public. And I just, is there any limitation to my ability to use any of this information to when I'm out there in DC, to let folks know, hey, this is how we're doing it right?
Yeah, I would say a couple of things, and then also kind of lean the attorney side on this. I think there's 2 things that we've done. One is that we have agreed to coordinate any publicity that we do about these agreements with the carriers to make sure that we're accurately telling their story.
Yeah.
And making sure that the message that we're conveying is correct. In terms of an advocacy standpoint, we have the ability to advocate as we need to and advocate as we feel appropriate to tell the story on what's important with the FCC or anybody else. I think that the kind of the tightrope that we're walking here is we have a great relationship with the local teams and the local carriers, and we want to make sure that we're able to preserve that and execute on the $500 million worth of work that we have before us. Mm-hmm. But as you know, we also want to continue to have this ability and for others to have the ability to do this good work. So I think there's a tension there, but I do think what I would say is I'm very proud of the work that we're doing, and it will deliver a 5G future to San Jose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is great. I just know that there's a lot of eyes on San Jose. Wall Street Journal took a shot, I think, a week ago at us. an editorial that we know was clearly manufactured from the industry, and it is important for us to be able to tell the truth, and I think that's really important. The 4,000 cells that we got deployed, I know it's the largest set of deals in the country. What's our goal or timeline for being able to deploy 4,000 cells? Does that a lot of that depend on market demand that we don't control, or is this something where whenever we get a process up to warp speed, that will happen?
So 2 out of those carriers have shared plans with us that roughly averages 500 small cell nodes per calendar year.
Okay.
So many of those metrics I shared on the operational metrics, primarily the pace that we can release permits per week as an overall measure of our velocity, along with being able to respond to the shared partnership of that shot clock of 30 days or 60 days for the third carrier. That's what enables us already in second gear to contractually meet the demands for one carrier's plans in 1 calendar year for 500 small cell nodes.
So the collective would be 1,000 per
Correct.
calendar year, and our understanding is that's the pace that they want to deploy at, and the
Right.
pace that they want us to meet. Our agreements are, and part of the value trading in our agreements are that they are citywide,
Yep.
and that's the value that we get out of them. So, we expect this to be a 4-year deal.
Right. So terminal velocity 20 a week for 4 years.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay, that's helpful. And then the shot clock I know is somewhere between 60 and 90 days for the FCC. Is that right?
The FCC is 60 and 90, depending on if it's a co-location or a brand new site.
Okay. And we're pretty confident the way we're doing it, we're able to consistently beat that.
Correct.
Okay, that's great. Okay, wonderful. And are we getting any response from the carriers at this point?
We are. So with those photos of the carrier workshops and those weekly calls that we've been conducting since June, we definitely have a partnership. We're learning from each other. And so far as they've supplied commentary, they feel confident in our partnership and the improvements we're making and continue to make.
Great. Thank you.
I read somewhere that I think, well, I don't remember the headline, but I think in some cities 5G has been activated in some limited fashion. Do we know when San Jose is like in the queue for that kind of treatment?
That activation really will be determined by the carriers themselves, and they each have different technologies and sort of different timelines on that. So it's not for me to sort of blow anybody's announcement, and I actually don't know necessarily exactly when they are. But what I will say is what we're deploying now will allow them to turn that switch on when they're ready to do so. So some smaller cities may be deploying some limited deployments, and we'll be much larger than that and at scale within this 4-year period.
Sure. And then just to refresh my memory, we've talked about cells and light poles and LED lights a lot in this committee and in council. So I'm just trying to refresh my memory. It used to be back in the day when we had the agreement with Philips that they would get our smart poles, or they would get to put up smart poles, and in exchange they'd put up an LED light. So now we've also done this thing where they get the poles and they contribute to a digital inclusion fund. So are they still swapping out LED lights, or are we just taking that and doing it on our own separately?
It depends, is the answer. So in the case where, and actually, you look like you've got a little more detail on it in terms of that, how the swap out, technical, when we swap out to LED and when we don't. Go for it.
Lily Lim, the DOT Transportation Division Operations Division Manager. Verizon, both Verizon and AT&T are on record to provide up to 1,000 LED replacements with the work. So it's part of the package.
Okay, thank you.
And just, these are much slimmer poles than the earlier smart poles that you see. I just flipped back to the design. Most people looking at it wouldn't even necessarily know that there was anything different other than that antenna on the top, 2 small cells a little bit farther down, and 1 power box. So it's a much, much more trim design that can go on existing poles. Those poles, the existing poles, if they're structurally sound, will work off of those. If they aren't, we'll replace them with a structurally sound pole. And as Lily said, up to 1,000 of those would include an LED replacement. But we've prioritized sort of the structural integrity over the LEDs.
All right. Well, I'm excited to see the new interface and allowing the companies to kind of check out our inventory more easily and allowing this process to accelerate. So thank you for all the hard work.
Thank you. My question is more in terms of the community. I know that we have a provide public notice process of 20 days. And so my question is on the implementation of some of these small cell sites, have we received any public pushback or resistance? Because I know that that's one topic that my residents in my district bring up all the time, is the deployment of these small cells. So I just want to know, in terms of your process, have you experienced that quite a bit, and what are our strategies to address it?
That's a great question. We have received some inquiries. They've all been primarily positive. I would categorize the inquiries run along the line of 3 categories. One, there's a confusion with the wood utility poles that are not owned by the city and not under our regulatory control or proprietary control. 2, some general concerns about health impacts of the spectrum and frequency, which we are preempted from engaging on by the FCC. And then 3, general concerns about design, and really based upon impressions from, again, those wood utility pole designs, which are not as streamlined as the one we have. So I have engaged the public to respond. I'd also like to point out we have a great frequently asked questions, or FAQ, on the website, which is at www.sanjoseca.gov/smallcells, where a lot of common questions can be addressed. And Public Works, Department of Transportation, and Planning, Building, and Code Enforcement have been referring the public to that FAQ website, where a lot of these questions can be answered.
And then I would say from my side, the higher you go, the less you know. So I'm actually part of the escalation process if we have serious issues, and I'm pleased to report that nothing has come up to my level yet, which means they've been resolved through the process so far. I expect them to be over time, but at this point, the procedures that we put into place to deal with concerns or complaints have worked through the system, and we've got that process articulated. Obviously, if there's special circumstances, we're always available to respond or answer any particular residents' concerns that either residents or leaders might have, but so far the process appears to be working.
Great. And just two observations. One, Kip, thank you for the new phrase, meta principles. Sorry, I always learn one new phrase a day, or when we have this meeting. And also, Jay, appreciate your analogy with using the different gears, but we have a whole generation of drivers who have never used a stick. So they have no idea what you're talking about.
They don't even drive anymore. They just use scooters. Yeah.
But thank you for that analogy. So we have one member of the community, Blair, who wants to speak.
For the record, I still drive a stick.
Hello, thank you. I didn't quite fully hear exactly how you're working the public notice process. I guess, it can always be talked about. Before coming here, it was my hope that it could be a process where you offer a 20-day public notice, and I thought that after 20 days it was just closed to the public and everything was closed. You seem to suggest 30 to 60 days here. I didn't quite hear what you finished saying, but as the major utility permit application process goes through in the 30 to 60-day period, the public can still, neighborhood groups or whatever can make their claim if they're not happy with where you want to put a 5G. And to have that option available, you have good guidelines. I guess I can respect those guidelines, but I hope that you can be open and not loose, but open if the public needs a few more days or a week or so or two more to gather and organize themselves and how to if they're not happy with what you'll be presenting to a certain neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Blair. Can I get a motion, please?
Move to approve. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Motion passes. Thank you. Thank you, team. Next is item D3, Facebook Live and Box Pilot Debrief.
And for this item, I'd like to invite up my colleagues, the Director of Communication, Rosario Nieves, and the Mayor's Chief Innovation Officer, Shireen Santosham, who provide an update on the work we're doing so far around Facebook Live and Box skills. Our Smart City vision, as you know, includes this notion of transparency and visibility on the workings of government and responsiveness to our citizens. And so these are two pilots that we launched to test and learn. Also with us is Denzel Eden, who is one of our new talents as well on the scene. So again, continuing to build the powerful team. So with this, I believe I am transitioning to Rosario to begin the presentation.
Good afternoon, council members. Rosario Nieves, Director of Communications. So in March 2018, we launched two pilots to explore how to increase engagement with this committee and our residents. Our pilots involved using Facebook Live to stream the Smart Cities Committee and Box Skills' AI technology to help residents search for content from past City Council meetings. So what you're looking at there is an overview of each one of the pilots. The objective of the Facebook Live pilot is to increase awareness and engagement with residents. We use the Facebook Live feature on the City of San Jose's main Facebook page to stream live video and promoted the stream on Facebook and through Twitter. The objective of the Box Skills pilot is to test the feasibility of Box Skills' AI technology for our purposes. Box Skills hosted the video and we promoted it externally to residents through a blog post and social media. Box Skills' AI technology makes it easy for residents to interact and search for past City Council meetings. So both of these pilots enable us to test new ways to make our information transparent and accessible to residents, and they offer us another way and another touch point for us to engage with residents. So I'll turn it over to Denzel. She's going to tell you a little bit, to Shireen, who's going to tell you a little bit more about why we're doing this.
Thank you, Rosario. So why are we doing this? The reality is that most residents in our city don't engage with local city government. And this really gives us an opportunity to build a more inclusive and user-friendly city, which is in line with our smart city vision, and demonstrate new technology with the best technology firms that we have right here in the Valley. And Facebook Live in particular brings content onto a platform that users are already on. So we're taking the content to them rather than expecting them to come to us. It also allows them to engage with the content in a much more dynamic way. And it allows them to engage by, even if they're not physically present here. Most people are working right now in the city. And so it gives them that opportunity. And with the Box pilot, we're really trying to understand a new type of technology, video search and AI. And it can also empower our residents to search that content much more easily. So if you've ever tried to search for content on the Granicus system, it's very difficult and very bulky. And so these new tools are really a way to empower our residents to be able to find the information that they're looking for. Also, we actually end up spending on all our collective tools around Granicus and streaming video close to $250,000 a year in the city. And so as technology advances, what are the opportunities for us to actually have significant cost savings over time? I will emphasize this is, the Box product in particular is very early, and so we're going to talk about some of the limitations about working with a product that's so early. But I'll turn it over to Denzel, who is the newest member of my team. You may remember Henry Tsai, who started this project and was a Harvard Business School Leadership Fellow last year, and so Denzel is part of that program. She, in addition to her Harvard Business School degree, has an undergrad degree and a master's degree in computer science engineering from MIT. She worked for Microsoft, and she was also president of her HBS section, so we will all be working for her one day. Denzel.
Thank you for having me, Mr. Chair, Honorable Mayor, and committee members. I'm excited to talk to you about these two pilots. As you may know, Facebook is a free-to-use platform, and Live is one of the available features on Facebook. The greatest aspect of Facebook Live is that it can facilitate mobile real-time engagement with our residents. This slide shows what it looks like and what the process entailed. So as you can see, this screenshot was taken right after our last meeting on September 6th. And before every meeting, we prepare a small paragraph explaining the content of the meeting, and it is posted several days before the live stream occurs in order to pique interest. When the live stream is streamed, there's another notification saying that the streaming is occurring now, and after the meeting, the post is still available to be viewed by residents, and there's still opportunities to engage with that content through shares, likes, or comments. And for this pilot, the promotion for Facebook Live was primarily done through the Facebook City page and through the mayor's Twitter. The outcomes for this pilot were very exciting. First, I want to explain what the data here you're seeing entails. So Facebook reach is the number of unique people who have viewed the content. And we've compiled the Facebook reach for each of the 4 meetings that this was piloted for. You can also see the comparison to Granicus's page views. The Granicus views are starting from October of last year, so you can see how it is pretty stable over time. There was a lot of excitement for when we first launched this Facebook Live pilot. And while the viewership began to stabilize near the end of the 4th meeting, you can still see that by the end it was 70 times greater than the interaction that we receive on the Granicus page. While, in addition to the reach, Facebook also has additional ways of facilitating engagement. So we have the shares, the likes, and comments, and that this is a snapshot taken in time, but this interaction can continue on for as long as the content is posted on the Facebook page. I'm now going to turn it over back to Rosario to explain our recommendations moving forward.
So at this time, my recommendation is to explore a new 4-month pilot to continue testing Facebook Live, but also to specifically evaluate YouTube as an alternative option for streaming. YouTube is also a very widely used platform. 73% of all Americans are on YouTube versus 68% of all Americans who are on Facebook. So it's not necessarily considered a social media site and sharing platform. It's primarily a video sharing platform. But one of the reasons that we want to explore using YouTube as well is because we're still exploring how best to respond to residents' comments on Facebook. And Facebook, since it's a social media sharing platform, it's meant to create a community conversation. And so if we're not resourced internally to be able to respond to residents' comments in real time, then we need to look at other ways that we can still use the streaming technology, but maybe not to hold two-way conversations. So YouTube is a platform that could help meet our needs. So what we want to do is recommend another 4 months. 2 of those months will solely focus on looking at YouTube, and then the next 2 months we'll explore both YouTube streaming and Facebook Live. And then we'd like to bring back those recommendations to the committee, or those outcomes to the committee, and look at what the engagement looks like with that type of pilot. We also want to explore different types of marketing and promotional efforts. We did minimal marketing and promotion, mainly through Facebook and also through Twitter. But some ideas that the team here created are to possibly use a consistent hashtag. We hadn't really promoted it using a social media hashtag, so that's something that we can do differently. The next would be to expand promotion to Nextdoor, which is a very active platform. Also, we could coordinate with Councilmember Jones, who is the committee chair, to possibly promote it by maybe having a video where you're going on Facebook Live and you're teasing out what the agenda is going to be for the Smart Cities Committee that day. We can also identify and work with other influencers in San Jose. We saw a lot of engagement through Mayor Liccardo's tweet and tweets on his Twitter, but there could also be some other influencers that we'd like to leverage and promote that way. Shireen and her team have also offered to identify some funding sources so that we can continue to promote our efforts with open government and transparency in this way. And then we will also be evaluating staff time and any other resource impact during this extended 4-month pilot.
And so I'll talk about the box pilot that occurred in parallel. With that pilot, we worked to address in finding ways to convey the content of these meetings. As you know, the city holds nearly 20 city council and committee meetings a month, and they can range from 2 hours to nearly a day. And a lot of that content gives a lot of that content gives our city policy and staff direction, and so it's really important for that content to be available to our residents. And so Box Skills demonstrated the ability to help with that problem, and here you can see what the Box user experience looked like. So with Box, every time a video was streamed, it would be uploaded to the Box cloud storage solution, and Box Skills would process that video to understand what topics were discussed in the content of the video, and it would try to do real-time transcription of the conversation as well. And finally, it would try to understand who were the main speakers during the content of the video, and it allowed users to be able to scrub through the video to figure out when speakers were speaking about what topics. So this is very exciting, and Box has many planned features for the future, including real-time translation of the transcription, but that doesn't exist yet. I really want to take the time to celebrate how this is an example of a small wonder project. It was very low risk for us to partner with them, and both sides of the city as well as Box were very happy with the partnership. It was very cutting edge. This is very exciting features that aren't even widely available to the public yet. And so this was a great opportunity for us. And about the product itself, it's still very early stage. The skill set was mostly focused around internal team productivity. Box is focused on cloud storage solution, and it's really meant to be used by teams at companies. And so it doesn't provide a comprehensive feature set for government, and their new plans for future skills aren't really catered to us. But the process of going through this and by partnering with them, we were able to understand what are some of the skills available in the future. The pilot is available until next year, and Box knows that we're wrapping up this pilot, but they're encouraging us to continue to use the product while we have access to it. So now I'll pass it on to Shireen.
Thanks, Denzel. So as Denzel mentioned, I just want to highlight a couple of things. This is a very cutting-edge partnership. I mean, rarely does a government work with a company on something that's so early. And I think they had about nearly a dozen partners, and we were the only city or only government entity within it. And some of the mutual learnings for them and for us were very much celebrated on both sides. So there was a blog that was written about Box. The CEO of Box, I think Henry wrote that, and the CEO of Box, tweeted that out. We had Rob and I both speaking at their conference this year. So this was a very good learning experience for both sides. It's a partnership that we will continue in the long term, but not on this particular product. And this is really an example of how the Small Wonders pipeline should work, which is we spent time, on the discovery phase. We found potential use for this. We executed the pilot, but ultimately this is not a scalable product in its current form for the city, and that is just fine. So what our recommendation is that although we won't move forward with this product in the long term, we would like to spend some time continuing it in this committee until we shut it down in early 2019, and we'll promote it as a sandbox experiment. So we actually did, in contrast to the Facebook Live pilot, we did zero promotion on the Box side. And so what we'd like to do is put this product onto the new mayor's website, be very clear that this is a sandbox experiment that is shutting down, but help to showcase that San Jose is a place where companies can come and test new products and technology, and that we're open for that kind of testing if we can see value in it for our residents. And we definitely learned a lot about how to interact with video AI, what the limitations are, and so as these types of products become more available, we'll be able to embrace them and then potentially realize more efficiencies and savings, as well as greater civic engagement on this. So we will also be very clear about measuring data from this pilot and seeing how much engagement. So as Denzel showed, the data on how many people were engaging with it. In this next few months, we'll be able to see, do residents really see value in this type of interaction, and do we see folks, searching more on this platform than they do, say, on Granicus.
Thank you to Denzel, Shireen, and Craig Judson, the City Clerk's Office, and our Council Committee members for your work and participation in this 4-month pilot. We will keep evaluating and iterating, and we look forward to continuing to update you on this innovative pilot. And at this time, we'll take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosario and Shireen and Denzel. Great report. It's very exciting stuff. My dreams of being an internet sensation were dwindling with our ratings. But now I feel like I have another bite at the apple in terms of my 15 minutes of fame. So
YouTube. That's your future.
YouTube, yeah, thank you. So, Mayor, do you have?
Sure. Why not?
I know. Mayor, ask your questions.
Thank you so much. And again, thanks for all the great work that's being done here. It's, we recognize it's both exciting and we know there are limitations to what some of these tools can do, and it's important for us to still push ahead. And I just had a sort of a question out of sort of curiosity with our interaction with Box. Do we ever expect that there's going to be a version 3.0 or 4.0 that might have the functionality that we would really want to have for a public portal?
We don't think that it will fully meet the needs because there are a lot of sort of legal restrictions around what it would take to be the platform of record for the city. And though there are many elements of the technology that we would love to see in a platform like Granicus, they don't have plans to build out that level of functionality. What we are doing is looking at alternative platforms. So there are some interesting new startups that have some elements that you see in Box that are tailored specifically for local governments, and so we're looking at pilots for those.
Cool. And then with regard to the resource impact in each of these projects, both the Box and the Facebook Live, can you describe a little bit of that to help us understand what this looks like in terms of staff, energy, and time?
So as far as the Facebook Live resource impact, what we're looking at here is staff time of mine. And so Craig Judson is our broadcast and operations engineer, and this has been his project that he's been collaborating with us on. So this takes about a couple of hours of his time pre-committee. And then also the monitoring and engagement of the comments during the meeting, that has been a collaboration with the council staffs. And so we've been allocating one person who would monitor comments and engagement during the meeting. And we have seen engagement taper off. I think in the first month we did see some more engagement from residents. People thought it was cool. And a lot of the comments that we got was just, this is great that the city's doing this, very cool. And then over time we just haven't seen as much engagement from the residents in that way. So that's something that we do want to market and promote more. I think the more that we put this out there and the more that residents would get used to it, then we'd probably see a little bit more engagement, and that would require a dedicated community manager who's monitoring the Facebook Live stream and who's able to respond to residents' questions or concerns in real time.
It's helpful.
So
Thanks
that's
for
on
sharing.
the Facebook Live.
Yeah.
And then Box. Do you want to talk about that?
So for Box, it was a little bit less staff time it was mostly like either me or Henry would download the video or get access to the video and then upload it to Box, which took a certain amount of processing time as Box went through the video. And then it required manual labor on Henry or my part to update the metadata, so to label like the council members' faces with the correct information and to add the right information. And so that's a fully manual process. And we spoke to Box about trying to create a user experience to automate that, but that's just not in their priorities right now. And then we would try to republicize it, but actually there was no standardized promotion plan around the Box video, and so that's something that we hope to do more in the future.
Okay, thanks, Denzel. That's helpful. I mean, I appreciate everyone who's working on these projects is busy, but it seems like there's a pretty discrete amount of commitment for what is considerable gain for us to learn, and I just really appreciate us trying projects like this. I think it's helpful, and it communicates importantly to our community that we care about their engagement. So I hope we can continue to push on in whatever form it might be. I appreciate it sound like, Rosario, that we were hedging a little on marketing because we didn't want to get out there beyond too far out over our skis in terms of our ability to manage response. And so, am I right in saying what you had before was a very modest effort of a couple tweets, and now we're actually going to be more deliberate with Nextdoor and other tools to really get the word out about this?
I'd say that that's an accurate description.
Okay.
Yeah, yes, I think that one of the considerations that we took into place is just the ability for staff to just get the pilot started. And so now that we have a process developed around it, there's some efficiencies that we can create there. We can certainly look at putting more of our energy and time to marketing and promoting it in advance so that we can get the word out there more and see if residents will start to pick up on it and engage with us in this way.
Okay. Well, I hope you'll really lean on the individual council and mayor's offices too to get the word out as well. I think, I know each of us have our own universes, and especially Lonnie's tweeting, I think, every 20 seconds.
Yes.
So
Right now.
Yes,
he's probably tweeting when I'm saying, yeah, I don't know.
Yes, we'd appreciate that support.
Yeah, absolutely. So please lean on us, and I benefit enormously from those like you who understand the best strategy. We'll certainly happy to try to get the word out in a way that aligns with that strategy. And then I guess the use of Box, I understand the need to simply move on at some point. Would we be trying to, at any point between now and the spring, to integrate Box with the YouTube pilot, or is this solely a Box Facebook Live partnership?
So the videos that we end up streaming on YouTube, we can then upload onto Box.
Okay.
And we can explore if there's like a way to connect the YouTube API to the Box API to see if that's automatable. So that is the plan.
Okay, great, thanks.
Let me just finish this tweet. I appreciate what this is, where this is going. Speaking of Twitter, have you considered the Periscope or the Twitter Live function?
That hasn't been something that we've talked about, but it's a great point. Periscope and Twitter Live, both are video streaming capable. So I think as we look at exploring other video sharing platforms like YouTube, we can certainly look at those too to see if there's any, if we see more reach that way.
I appreciate the ability to index people's faces and to have a community engagement officer or a person to answer questions. As kind of one of the more social media friendly council members, I used to be all over the place, and I'd post, here's my lunch, and here's City Hall, and here's behind the scenes, and all the things you get to see when you're just here's underneath our dais what it looks like. But it got to a point where I would try to engage with every person who would say things, but then, as is inevitable, people start saying less than friendly things. And it presented me with a conundrum, because as someone who wanted to be, social media savvy and engaging folks and responding to everybody who had a question about something city related, I found myself at times maybe being aggressive with people who were aggressive to me because I wanted to, tit for tat. Or I found myself selecting, well, I'll just ignore this person's comment and respond to the person who had a nicer kind of question, which poses this interesting thing of how do you choose to respond to? So unfortunately, I find myself now just being less responsive on social media overall, because the Facebook comment section is really not a good place to have a policy discussion anyway. But that's just my roundabout way of saying, I think it's important or helpful to get our meeting stream just period, even if we're unable to index them, even if we're unable to have a transcript or have somebody who's actively responding to questions or tweets. If we just get the video onto YouTube or Twitter or Facebook and just have it there for people to more easily access than our Civic Center TV website, I think that's a win. So I appreciate all the effort around Box and potential funding that goes into this, but if we can just get the raw footage out on the internet, I think that's a win for us too.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I would agree. I think it speaks to what are our objectives, right, with this pilot, and then just what are our objectives with communications overall. And we seek to be transparent, as far as open government, and also to inform and engage our residents about the decisions that are being made. So I think allowing us to use those types of streaming technologies like YouTube, it will enable us to just give them another option for us to choose from. And then if we do see that there's efficiencies or cost efficiencies that can be realized in the long term, then, maybe we don't need the Granicus as well, and we can look at alternate technologies. So I think this is all something that is good conversation and that we're looking to explore with the pilot.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I just wanted to add to the answer. I think what this pilot shows is just that we're really missing out if we're not engaging with some social media, because even in the low case here, we're at 70 times the viewership that we normally have. And so I just want to really thank Rosario for her leadership and her push for social media in the city. And as we move into this next phase, trying to figure out what mix of social media platforms are going to be best for this engagement, I think is really critical.
Just following up on that, I assume the kind of this experiment with Box takes some sort of funding and obviously staff hours. But if we were just to go the route of getting raw footage and putting it up, you mentioned earlier there were legal restrictions or some issues with that, using YouTube just as a general. Or were there some sort of Brown Act things or issues with just putting footage up online?
No,
Okay.
there are no legal implications to that.
There are some Brown Act and some Public Records Act requirements for public meetings, but I believe these are in conjunction with whatever other records we have. So you could do a YouTube, you could do a Facebook Live in conjunction with what our existing are, so long as we comply with the record retentions under the Brown Act and the Public Records Act.
Okay, well, I would just suggest going the route of raw footage, even if we can't index it and do all the fancy stuff. But if we can, let's do it. Thanks.
And the only other requirement is that we must offer closed captions, and YouTube would allow us to do that as well.
I just have one quick question. It's a capability and it's a privacy question for the viewers on Facebook Live who have gone in and watched, one of the meetings. Is there a way to capture that information and then mark it back out to them, since we know that they're already have used the service or viewed one of our meetings? So do we have that capability, and are there any privacy issues around that?
We do have access to who has viewed it, and I think I don't know as much about that. I think Astra would know more.
I think that's something that we'd have to look at about whether or not we could sort of market that back to them. I think we would like to take that as an action item.
Okay, great. So that was the only question. So if we can follow up on that, it'd be greatly appreciated.
Will do.
All right. I have one public speaker, Blair. You're going to pass. And you're going to pass on open forum too?
Can I take Mr. Beekman's 2 minutes?
Yes, Mayor.
Okay, fabulous, thanks. Just moving forward, as we think about other committees and how we might roll this out, are we thinking there would be a strategy, for example, around every committee chair being able to dedicate a little bit of staff time, being able to respond and moderate? I think Councilmember Jones has done so. In this case, maybe that could be a good model for us for other committees.
Yes, I think as we look at scaling up, I think we would need to pull in other resources, just because on the administration side, we just don't have that dedicated staff to support all the council and committee meetings. So if there's a way to collaborate and use a working model where we leverage council committee staff, that would be a good model, I think, that we can certainly explore.
Okay, great. And then as you're thinking about the social media strategy, getting the word out, if you could wrap us in and get David and everybody involved, that'd be great, because we'd like to push with you.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can I get a motion, please?
So moved. Second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you. So we're now at open forum. Blair, take us away.
Oh, mic's not going. Okay, 153 here. I'd like to mention the ideas of what the first subject was on the Future 2.0 smart city stuff. If I can, I really like innovation. They want to be open with themselves, and they want to work collaboratively. And it was mentioned here today, how they can do that better. And to me, if they can learn how to do that with the public as well, learn those sort of skills that they're learning internally at this time, I'm really hopeful of that idea. You know, it's an important concept to learn how to do that, and I'm hopeful that that's what they can do. I had a few other issues about the light pole LED program. You know, we're in November now. We should be at a place where it's working and it's going. And is that a way to learn how to practice accountability practices with the public, with the LED light program, with the Siemens, you know, nightstick thing? Is it time to begin to develop community ways for like the surveillance and technology ordinance that you're working on, and to start to introduce that at a more broad public level? I'm hopeful of those kind of ideas at this time. Also, yeah, there's just an idea of accountability that civic innovation is working on. That's nice and hopeful and exciting, and I hope we can all be a part of it and grow from it. Thank you.
Thank you, Blair, and meeting is adjourned.